Three things, horrible things, were on display in the horrible events of last week in Israel. It was done in the name of God. That's blasphemy. It was violent, it was murderous. That's murder. There was rape and abuse and mutilation. That comes under the category of adultery. Those are the big three sins for which the Torah prescribes death penalty. Idolatry, adultery, murder. They all came together in an orgy of unholiness. We should take a lesson from that to strengthen ourselves in those three areas. Number one, instead of treating life as if it's disposable or dispensable, we have to rediscover the sanctity of life. Life is too precious to allow it to go hungry. Life is too precious to allow it to go into fear. People who are anxious, who live from day to day not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring, that's not the way you treat life. Those people have to be helped. Life has to be pleasant. Life has to be secure. Life has to be uplifting. So anything we do to make life more livable is the antidote to people who are fascinated with death. Having a baby, bringing babies into the world, supporting babies of the world will go a long way to counteracting the disregard of life, particularly against babies. The other thing is we need to make our relationships, our marriages, a little more sacred. It is a terrible thing to violate the holiness of matrimony. Marriage is a holy institution, and it needs to be treated that way. It's not fun and games. It's not sex and love. It's marriage. It's a divine institution, which is why almost everywhere people get married with a religious ceremony for all of history. Well, that tells you something. Marriage cannot be secular. Marriage can't be casual. Marriage can't be just an agreement between two people who ride off into the sunset. It has to be treated with sanctity. You have to have awe of your spouse. You have to have awe of marriage itself. If we treat it that way, we will heal the desecration of intimacy that we saw in such a painful way in Israel. And of course, these two things all depend on what we know about God. If we're not familiar, if we haven't learned, if we don't know what God really wants, then don't quote him. Don't create a God in your image. So when you're feeling a little violent, you decide that God enjoys violence. And when you're in a passion, you decide God encourages passion. Don't create God in your image. Find out what God really wants. Find out who God really is. And the only way to find that out is by learning Torah, studying Torah. We've preserved it all these years in the most impossible circumstances, when the world was completely against us and determined to destroy the Torah and replace it with a better idea or no idea. We didn't let it happen. The Torah is still intact. It can be studied, it can be understood, it can be known. If we do these three things, we are repairing the world where it was most damaged in that horrible event in Israel. So do that. Get to know God better. Bring more sanctity to your marriage or to sexual relationships in general. And support life. God says, I place before you the choice. between life and death, choose life. For the Jewish people, the one thing that we can do is to be more obviously Jewish so that we show no intimidation, no discouragement, no loss of purpose and direction. Do something Jewish, and that means something that only Jews do. Something insanely Jewish, like putting on tefillin for men. The reason we do it is because it's a commandment to the children of Israel. So by putting on the tefillin, you are being clearly identified as God's people. Keeping kosher. Nobody else keeps kosher. Others avoid pork, but that's not the same as kosher. So keeping kosher, again, insanely Jewish. Shabbat, it's a commandment in the Ten Commandments, but it's only for Jews, not for non-Jews. So if you keep Shabbat, you're being insanely Jewish. So pick a mitzvah that only Jews do. And there's a long list. Put a mezuzah on your door. Wear tzitzis in the four corners of your garments. There's a big selection. Pick a mitzvah you haven't been doing that really identifies you as a Jew, and do it with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. It's good for the whole world. There is so much to do to make the world better, but if you had to pick one to start with, tzedakah. Tzedakah, the Hebrew word for charity. Get one of these boxes for your home, for your office, for your car, and at every occasion, put in a few coins, making charity and giving a daily habit. It's incredible. The blessings that it brings, the success that it brings, and the help that it offers to people who need. Kolel Chabad. That's my charity of choice. Kolel Chabad, C-O-L-E-L, Chabad. Look it up, get yourself a box, and let's get the world better.